Have you ever noticed how sorrow has a way of lingering long after the moment has passed? A harsh word spoken years ago can still echo in your mind. A love lost can still make your chest ache as if it happened yesterday. We tell ourselves time heals all wounds, but time alone does not heal. It is how we hold our pain that decides whether we suffer for years or finally live in peace. Buddhism teaches us that sorrow is not meant to be carried forever. It is like smoke, meant to rise and vanish, not to be trapped in our lungs. Yet most of us breathe it in every day, replaying our suffering, owning it, feeding it, until it becomes part of who we are. But what if you could learn to let go? What if you could release every weight, every wound, every shadow, and finally live free? Today, I want to share with you powerful Buddhist lessons, so powerful that once you understand them, sorrow will never have the same hold over you again. 1. The river does not keep its wounds. Imagine standing by the side of a great river as it travels through valleys, mountains, and endless plains. Along its path, the river faces countless challenges. Sharp rocks slice into its current, storms pour heavy rains that overwhelm its banks, branches fall and break within it, and mud clouds its once clear waters. Yet, despite everything that happens to it, the river never clings to any of it. It does not hold a scar, it does not collect a memory of what harmed it, and it does not pause to complain about what it has endured. The water simply flows onward, steady and unresisting, carrying what it can and releasing what it cannot. By tomorrow, the river will look new again, fresh, as though nothing had ever wounded it at all. This is one of the simplest but most profound lessons nature whispers to us. Water cannot cling, and because of that, it remains free. The river is always in motion, always renewing itself, always refusing to be defined by the storms of yesterday. If it held onto every branch, every rock, and every storm, it would stop being a river and turn into a stagnant pool. Its life is in its flow. Its freedom is in its letting go. Human beings, however, often do the opposite. Instead of flowing, we hold tightly to what has hurt us. Someone betrays us once, and we replay the betrayal 100 times in our minds. A word spoken years ago still cuts us today, not because it is still being said, but because we carry the echo of it in our hearts. We do not allow pain to pass through us. Instead, we trap it, replay it, and feed it, until what should have been one wound becomes thousands of wounds, reopened again and again. Buddhism teaches that sorrow itself cannot destroy us, but our attachment to it can. Pain arrives like a stone thrown into the river. It makes a ripple, it disturbs the flow, but if left alone, the water smooths out and continues. When we hold on to the stone, when we cling to the moment, we prevent the river of our life from flowing. The wound does not heal because we keep it alive in memory, thought, and self-talk. To let go of sorrow does not mean pretending that nothing happened or erasing the memory altogether. It means learning how to stop giving it power over you day after day. It means refusing to let the same moment harm you 1,000 times when it only needed to harm you once. When you let the wound become part of the flow, it transforms into wisdom. It becomes something that shaped your river, not something that blocked it. The river shows us that freedom lies not in clinging, but in moving. Just as water never allows the scars of yesterday to weigh it down, you too can choose not to let your past chain you. To live like water is to keep flowing. It is to recognize that life is movement, and pain becomes dangerous only when you trap it inside your heart. If you learn to let experiences pass through you the way a river lets storms pass through it, you will find that sorrow loses its grip and peace begins to flow as naturally as water rushing forward into the sea. 2. Suffering is the teacher you refuse to thank. When pain enters your life, the first reaction is often rejection. You ask yourself why this happened, why now, and why to you. The human mind is quick to label suffering as something unfair, something that should never have touched your life. We resist it, fight against it, and curse it as if it were a cruel enemy. But Buddhism teaches us to look at suffering from a perspective that transforms it completely. Suffering is not only pain, it is also a teacher. In fact, it is often the teacher that brings you the deepest lessons, the ones joy could never reveal. Think for a moment about your past. Reflect on the times when everything went smoothly, when success was easy, when relationships were filled with happiness, when life flowed without obstacles. During those times you felt good, but did you truly grow? Did you learn patience, strength, or compassion? Probably not. Comfort rarely forces you to look deeper within yourself. It allows you to drift, to remain as you are. It is suffering that interrupts this drift and shakes you awake. When you lose someone you love, you come face to face with the reality of impermanence, and you are forced to ask yourself what truly matters. When you fail after giving your best, you learn humility, resilience, and the courage to try again without the arrogance of thinking success is guaranteed. When your heart is broken, you understand trust, loyalty, and love in a way you never could have from happiness alone. The problem is not that suffering comes. The problem is that we refuse to accept its role as a teacher. Instead of listening to its lesson, we resist it. We bury it under anger and resentment, hoping it will vanish. But when we resist, we suffer twice, once from the pain itself, and again from our refusal to learn what it came to teach. It is like a student refusing to attend class, then complaining that they did not gain knowledge. Suffering is the class, and the sooner we attend, the sooner the wisdom becomes ours. In Buddhism, this truth is reflected in the Four Noble Truths. The first truth is that suffering exists. It is a part of life. The second truth is that much of this suffering comes from our clinging, our unwillingness to let go. But within these truths lies an invitation. Suffering is not meaningless. It is the very path through which awakening and liberation are found. Without suffering, there would be no reason to seek a higher way of living. Without pain, there would be no motivation to look beyond the illusions of permanence, control, and ego. When you begin to see suffering as a teacher, your relationship with it changes. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you begin to ask, "What is this here to teach me?" Instead of resisting, you begin to open yourself to the lesson. In that shift, something remarkable happens. Gratitude replaces bitterness. You may not be grateful for the pain itself, but you become grateful for the strength, wisdom, and compassion it awakened within you. The heartbreak that once felt like a curse becomes the reason you learn to love with deeper sincerity. The failure that crushed your pride becomes the moment you discovered the strength to rise again with humility. The loss that shattered you becomes the lesson that taught you to treasure the present moment, because nothing lasts forever. Sorrow, when resisted, is poison. But sorrow, when accepted as a teacher, becomes medicine. It shapes you in ways comfort never could. It purifies you, stripping away illusions, breaking the shell of the ego, and forcing you to grow into a truer version of yourself. And while nobody likes the presence of suffering, it is often the very thing that sets you on the path toward peace. To see suffering as punishment is to remain its prisoner. To see it as a teacher is to be liberated by its wisdom. 3. Silence heals faster than answers. When life wounds us, our first instinct is to search for explanations. The mind begins its endless questioning. Why did this happen to me? Why did they treat me this way? Why didn't things go the way I planned? We convince ourselves that if we can only find the right reason, if we can only connect the pieces of the puzzle, then somehow the pain will vanish. But the truth is, explanations do not close wounds. They often keep them open. The constant search for answers is like scratching at a cut. Instead of allowing it to heal, you keep it raw, you keep it bleeding, and you keep yourself trapped in the cycle of hurt. Buddhism reminds us that silence has a healing power that words cannot match. Silence is not emptiness or weakness. It is space. It is breathing room. It is a gentle pause that allows the heart to rest. Just as a wound on the body heals more quickly when left undisturbed, the wounds of the mind heal when you stop picking at them with constant analysis. The more you chase explanations, the more the pain stays alive. But when you turn to silence, not the silence of suppression, but the silence of acceptance, you allow the natural process of healing to unfold. Think about the times you have been hurt deeply. You may have tried to replay every detail, searching for clues, asking yourself what went wrong or what you could have done differently. Perhaps you even asked others for endless advice, hoping their words would give you closure. Yet often, no answer felt satisfying. No explanation could undo what happened, and the more you searched, the more exhausted and heavy your heart became. Now contrast that with the rare moments when you simply sat in stillness, not asking, not analyzing, not demanding explanations. In those moments, the pain softened. You may not have had the answer, but you felt lighter, calmer, more at peace. That is the quiet medicine of silence. Buddhism calls this noble silence. It is noble because it takes courage to stop demanding and simply allow things to be as they are. It is noble because it is not about avoiding or escaping, but about creating space for truth to reveal itself naturally. When you sit quietly with your pain, you discover that much of your suffering was not caused by the event itself, but by the storm of thoughts you wrapped around it. Silence clears the storm. Silence allows you to separate the pain of what happened from the suffering of what you are imagining, replaying, or exaggerating in your mind. In silence, you begin to see that not everything needs to be explained to be released. Closure is not always found in words. Sometimes it is found in the simple act of sitting still, breathing deeply, and letting the moment pass through you without resistance. Silence does not erase the memory, but it takes away the constant noise of judgment and questioning. In that quiet, you feel the weight lift, and healing begins naturally. The truth is, the mind believes that answers heal, but the heart knows that stillness is what it longs for. Explanations belong to the past, silence belongs to the present. And the present is the only place where peace is possible. When you learn to trust silence, when you stop trying to solve every pain like a puzzle, you discover that wounds close on their own, and the scar left behind is softer, gentler, no longer a burden. To let go of sorrow, you do not need all the answers. You need the courage to sit with silence. You need to let the heart breathe in stillness and allow time to do its work. Healing, after all, is not forced by thought. It blossoms quietly, like a flower opening in the morning sun. 4. You are not the storm, you are the sky. When sorrow comes, it feels overwhelming, like a storm that takes over everything in its path. Your chest tightens, your mind becomes restless, and your heart feels as though it is drowning under dark clouds of grief, anger, or despair. In those moments, it is easy to believe that you are the storm itself, that you are broken, fragile, and consumed by suffering. But Buddhism teaches us something far more profound. You are not the storm. You are the sky in which the storm passes. Imagine looking up at the sky on a day filled with thunder and rain. The clouds may be heavy and dark, the lightning may flash violently, and the winds may roar as if they will last forever. But no matter how fierce the storm, it is temporary. It moves across the sky, it changes shape, it breaks apart, and eventually it drifts away. What remains constant is not the storm, but the vastness of the sky that holds it. The storm can never destroy the sky. It may cover it for a time, but the sky remains untouched, infinite, and unbroken. This is what your true nature is like. Your thoughts, emotions, and sorrows are storms that come and go, but beneath them lies something far greater. Your awareness, your consciousness, the vast and boundless sky of your being. The problem arises when you forget this truth and mistake yourself for the passing weather. You say, "I am angry, I am hopeless, I am broken," as if your identity is the storm. But the storm is not who you are, it is only something moving through you. Think of the times you felt overwhelmed by sadness or anger, and yet days or months later, the feeling had faded. At the time, it seemed unbearable, endless, as though it would define your life forever. But it didn't. It passed. And after it passed, you remained. Just as the sky remains after every storm, so too does your true self remain after every wave of emotion. What this shows is that no matter how strong sorrow feels, it is never permanent. It does not define you, it only visits you. The Buddha often reminded his followers that emotions and thoughts are impermanent, like clouds drifting across the sky. To cling to them as if they are your essence is to suffer unnecessarily. Instead, you are invited to watch them with awareness, to allow them to come and go without losing yourself in them. When you sit in meditation, you begin to notice this truth. A thought arises, a feeling surfaces, a memory returns, but if you do not grasp it, it fades away on its own. You, the watcher, the sky, remain untouched. This shift in perspective is life-changing. When you see yourself as the storm, you feel fragile, powerless, and broken. But when you see yourself as the sky, you realize you are vast, stable, and unshaken by the temporary chaos passing through. You stop saying, "I am sorrow," and instead you begin to say, "Sorrow is visiting me, but I am larger than it." This simple shift weakens the grip of suffering. You no longer drown in the storm. You rise above it, and here lies the essence of peace. Peace does not come from controlling the storms of life. You cannot prevent rain, you cannot stop thunder, you cannot command the wind. Peace comes from remembering that you are not the storm. You are the space that holds it, the presence that endures beyond it. Once you anchor yourself in this awareness, no storm can truly harm you. It may pass through, it may shake you for a time, but it cannot destroy the vastness of your being. So when sorrow arrives, do not fight it, and do not mistake yourself for it. Let it pass through like clouds passing across the sky. Hold it gently with awareness, but do not claim it as your identity. In time, you will see that the storm has gone, but you, the sky, remain clear, expansive, and free. 5. Pain ends when you stop owning it. One of the most subtle yet powerful ways that sorrow tightens its grip on our lives is through the way we speak about it and the way we attach it to our sense of self. Listen carefully to the words we use when describing our suffering. My pain, my heartbreak, my sorrow, my trauma, my wounds. At first glance, it may seem harmless, even natural, to describe experiences this way. After all, you are the one who lived through them. You are the one who carries their memory. But this very act of ownership, this claiming of pain as mine, is what keeps the wound alive long after the moment has passed. You may not realize it, but every time you say "my pain," you give that pain a permanent seat inside your heart. Buddhism teaches us that nothing in this world truly belongs to us. Our possessions, our relationships, our bodies, our thoughts, and even our emotions, all of these are impermanent, passing, and beyond ultimate ownership. Yet the mind, conditioned to cling, insists on making them part of our identity. This is my house, my car, my success, my family, my happiness. And just as quickly, it becomes my failure, my grief, my suffering. The mind attaches, and with attachment comes suffering. When you claim sorrow as yours, you do not simply acknowledge its existence. You tie it to your identity, making it part of who you are. But here is the truth. Pain is not you. Pain is an experience that passes through you, like wind passing through the branches of a tree. It bends you for a time, it shakes your leaves, but it is not your essence. The tree is not the wind, just as you are not the sorrow. When you begin to see this clearly, something remarkable happens. The burden begins to lighten, not because the memory disappears, but because you no longer treat it as a piece of your soul. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents an event in your past. The harsh words someone spoke, the betrayal you endured, the opportunities you lost, the mistakes you regret. Over time, you have become so used to this backpack that you believe it is part of you. You even say, "This is my weight, this is who I am." But in reality, the backpack is not you. You are simply carrying it. And if you choose, you can set it down. The moment you understand this, a freedom you never imagined becomes possible. In Buddhist practice, this is called non-attachment. Non-attachment does not mean that you are cold, careless, or indifferent. It means you do not cling so tightly to experiences, good or bad, that they define you. You learn to let things come and let them go, without holding them hostage in your heart. When you stop saying, "my pain," and instead begin to say, "this is just pain, it is visiting me, but it is not me and it is not mine," you create space between yourself and the suffering. The pain becomes a guest, not a permanent resident. And like all guests, it eventually leaves. Think about the times when sorrow overwhelmed you. Perhaps you went through heartbreak and every thought was consumed with "my broken heart, my loss, my loneliness." Because you labeled it as yours, you carried it everywhere. You fed it, you nurtured it, you made it a part of your identity. But if you had seen it differently, if you had said, "This is heartbreak, this is loss, this is loneliness, but it is not who I am," then the experience would still have been painful, but it would not have lasted as long, nor would it have pierced so deeply. The difference lies not in what happened, but in how much ownership you claimed over it. The Buddha compared this to being struck by two arrows. The first arrow is the event itself, the pain, the loss, the betrayal, the failure. This arrow is unavoidable, for life brings both joy and sorrow. But the second arrow is the one we shoot ourselves when we cling to the pain, when we make it ours, when we replay it endlessly and carry it as if it defines us. This second arrow is optional, yet it is often the one that causes the greatest suffering. By owning pain, we shoot ourselves again and again, long after the first wound should have healed. Another way to understand this is to look at children. When a child falls and scrapes their knee, they cry, they feel the pain intensely, but very quickly they move on. They may cry for a moment, but then they return to play, distracted by the next joy, already forgetting the hurt. Why? Because they have not yet learned to cling, to own, to replay. Adults, on the other hand, will replay the scrape endlessly in their minds, adding layers of story and identity. Why did this happen to me? Why am I so unlucky? Why does life always hurt me? The actual pain may have lasted only a moment, but the ownership of the pain makes it stretch into days, months, even years. When you release ownership of pain, you also release the story you tell yourself about it. You stop building an identity around being the one who was wronged, the one who was betrayed, the one who failed. You stop introducing yourself to the world through your wounds. You stop reliving the same suffering because you stop claiming it as yours. And when the story fades, the suffering fades with it. This does not mean you ignore the pain or pretend it never happened. It means you recognize it for what it truly is. A passing state, an impermanent wave that comes and goes. By watching it without clinging, you transform your relationship with it. You become like a witness watching clouds move across the sky. The clouds may be dark and heavy, but they do not stain the sky. They pass, and the sky remains clear and vast. In the same way, sorrow may visit you, but it does not define you unless you let it. Buddhist meditation practices often emphasize this perspective. When sitting in meditation, you are encouraged to observe your thoughts and emotions without labeling them as mine. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," you say, "There is anxiety present." Instead of saying, "I am sad," you say, "Sadness is visiting." This subtle change in language creates a powerful shift in awareness. It reminds you that you are not the emotion. You are the space in which the emotion arises and fades. And once you understand this deeply, pain loses its hold. Freedom begins the moment you say, "This is just pain. It is not me. It is not mine. It is passing." The chain breaks, and suddenly you see how light you truly are when you are not carrying the unnecessary weight of ownership. The sorrow does not need to live inside you. It can visit and leave while you remain whole, steady, and free. So the next time you find yourself clinging to suffering, listen to your own words. Notice how often you say "my" before your pain, and in that moment, practice releasing. Say instead, "This is pain, but it is not my pain. It is simply a passing guest." The more you practice this, the more quickly sorrow will lose its grip. You will discover that peace does not come by erasing painful experiences from life. Peace comes by refusing to let those experiences define who you are. When you stop owning pain, you reclaim your freedom. You are no longer the prisoner of the past. You are no longer weighed down by stories that keep replaying. You are simply here, alive, present, allowing life to flow through you as naturally as the wind through the trees. Pain will still come, but it will no longer chain you. It will touch you, but it will not stay. It will pass, as all things do, leaving you lighter, freer, and more at peace than before. 6. The fire that burns you can also light you. When sorrow enters our lives, it often feels like fire. It burns through us, consuming everything in its path. It destroys our comfort, it strips away our sense of control, and it leaves behind ashes where joy once lived. Many people look at suffering this way, only as destruction, only as devastation, only as something to escape. They see fire only as a force of ruin. But Buddhism teaches us to look more deeply. Fire is not only destructive, fire is also transformative. It has two faces. One face burns, but the other illuminates. One face destroys, but the other forges. And it is in this dual nature of fire that we discover one of the most powerful truths about suffering. The same fire that burns you can also light you. Think about the nature of fire itself. It can devour a forest, but it can also give warmth on the coldest night. It can reduce wood to ash, but it can also refine metal into steel. It can scorch, but it can also purify. Without fire, food cannot be cooked, iron cannot be shaped, pottery cannot be hardened, and darkness cannot be lit. Fire is not simply good or bad. It is raw energy. It is power. And what matters is how it is used, how it is understood, and how we relate to it. Now think about your own life. Pain feels like fire. Betrayal burns. Loss scorches. Failure leaves scars. The natural reaction is to curse the flames, to run from them, to pray they never return. But in doing so, we miss the hidden gift within the fire. Suffering, when held with awareness, becomes the very thing that shapes us into something stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The Buddha taught that suffering is not the end, but the path. Just as ore must pass through fire to become gold, the human spirit passes through suffering to discover its true strength. Take betrayal, for example. When someone you trusted deeply wounds you, the fire feels unbearable. You feel anger, sadness, and disbelief. In those moments, it seems like the betrayal has only destroyed. But when you reflect on it with mindfulness, you begin to see something else. Betrayal shows you the value of trust. It teaches you discernment. It strips away illusions and forces you to see people more clearly. The fire may burn, but it also lights. It lights the wisdom to choose better, the strength to stand taller, and the compassion to understand that betrayal is not unique to you. It is a wound many carry. Or consider failure. When you put your heart into something and fall short, the flames of shame and disappointment rise. You feel reduced to ashes, as though all your effort was for nothing. Yet in truth, failure is one of the greatest forges of the human spirit. Every master was once a beginner who failed repeatedly. Every success was built upon the ashes of attempts that did not work. Failure humbles you, teaches you resilience, and reveals the depth of your commitment. If you let the fire burn away your pride but keep your determination, you emerge stronger, sharper, and more grounded. Loss, too, is fire. To lose someone you love, to watch them slip away through death or distance, is to feel consumed by flames. The absence is heavy, the grief unbearable. But even here, the fire holds light. Loss reveals impermanence. It teaches you that nothing lasts forever, and because of this, every moment matters. It urges you to hold those you love more closely, to appreciate the time you are given, to live without taking for granted. The fire of loss burns away illusion, but it also illuminates truth, that life is precious precisely because it is fleeting. This is the paradox of suffering. Left unexamined, it feels only like destruction. But seen with wisdom, it becomes transformation. In Buddhist practice, this is called turning poison into medicine. The very thing that seems to harm you becomes the very thing that heals you, because it forces you to grow in ways comfort never could. Comfort does not test your patience, but suffering does. Comfort does not reveal your hidden strength, but suffering does. Comfort does not teach compassion for others, but suffering does. The fire that burned you becomes the fire that lights your path forward. Imagine a blacksmith at work. He takes a piece of raw iron, rigid, dull, and unshaped. If left untouched, the iron will remain ordinary, of little use. But when placed into the fire, when exposed to heat and struck again and again with the hammer, the iron transforms. It becomes a sword, strong and sharp, capable of great purpose. Without fire, the transformation could never occur. In the same way, your suffering is the forge of your soul. It burns, yes, but it also refines. It removes what is weak, it strengthens what is true, and it shapes you into someone capable of carrying wisdom, strength, and peace. But here is the key. Fire alone does not transform. It must be met with awareness. If you resist suffering, if you cling to it with bitterness, the fire only burns. It consumes, leaving only ashes. But if you hold suffering with mindfulness, if you ask, "What can this teach me? How can I grow from this?" then the fire becomes your teacher. It stops being the enemy and becomes the forge. This is why some people emerge from hardship bitter, while others emerge radiant. It is not the suffering itself that makes the difference. It is how they relate to it. This is why Buddhism does not tell us to run from suffering or pretend it does not exist. Instead, it teaches us to face it with awareness, to hold it gently, and to see through its flames to the transformation it carries. The Buddha himself found enlightenment not by escaping suffering, but by sitting with it, understanding it, and transforming it. He discovered that fire need not destroy. It can illuminate the path to liberation. Think of the fire in your own life. Perhaps you went through heartbreak that seemed unbearable. Perhaps you failed at something you thought defined you. Perhaps you lost someone whose absence left you feeling empty. In those moments, it was natural to see the fire only as pain. But now, with time and reflection, can you see how it shaped you? Did it not teach you resilience, patience, compassion, or wisdom? Did it not light some part of your path, even if the light came slowly and quietly? Every flame that once seemed to destroy you also carried within it the power to reveal you. When you change the way you see suffering, you stop fearing it. You stop asking, "Why me?" and begin asking, "What is this fire here to show me?" You stop seeing it as punishment and start seeing it as purification. The fire may not be pleasant, but it is purposeful. It strips away illusions, burns away ego, and leaves behind clarity. The person who emerges after the fire is not the same as the one who entered. They are lighter, stronger, and more aware. So the next time sorrow comes, remember the fire. It will burn, that is its nature, but it can also light. It can light wisdom, compassion, strength, and resilience. It can illuminate truths you would never have seen in comfort. Do not run from the flames. Do not curse them endlessly. Sit with them, breathe through them, and allow them to shape you. Trust that even in the burning, there is light. And when you emerge from the fire, you will see what countless others have discovered. The same suffering that once seemed unbearable became the very source of your growth. The same flames that reduced you to ashes gave rise to a new version of you, forged in strength, glowing with wisdom, and unshakable in peace. The fire that once burned you will be the same fire that lights your way. 7. Peace is not found, it is chosen. When people think of peace, they imagine it as something far away, hidden in a distant temple, deep in the silence of the mountains, or buried in the embrace of some perfect circumstance. They say to themselves, "If only my life were different, if only I had this or that, if only people treated me better, if only I escaped this noise, then I would finally find peace." This way of thinking is what keeps so many wandering endlessly, searching for something that seems always out of reach. But Buddhism teaches us a truth that is both simple and profound. Peace is not found outside. Peace is chosen inside. Peace is not something you must chase across the world. It does not depend on the perfect arrangement of circumstances. It does not wait for you only when pain has disappeared or when your life has become free of difficulty. Peace is available here, now, in the very breath you are taking. The only barrier is whether or not you choose it. This may sound impossible at first, because how can one choose peace while still experiencing suffering, loss, or hardship? But the truth is that suffering and peace are not opposites. Peace is not the absence of pain, it is the way you hold pain. Peace is not the erasure of sorrow. It is the decision not to let sorrow define you. Imagine a person living in a noisy, crowded city. The streets are loud, the air is heavy, and people push past them without kindness. Another person lives in the stillness of the countryside, surrounded by mountains with birds singing and rivers flowing. You might think peace is easier for the one in the mountains, but if their mind is restless, full of worry, full of clinging and expectation, then even in the silence of the countryside, they will feel no peace. Meanwhile, the one in the noisy city, if their mind is calm, accepting and grounded, can sit in stillness even in the middle of chaos. This shows that peace is not in the environment. Peace is in the mind. The Buddha himself demonstrated this truth. He lived in a world filled with suffering, sickness, old age, death, poverty, conflict. He did not escape into a fantasy where such things did not exist. Instead, he looked deeply into the nature of suffering and discovered that liberation does not come from rearranging the world, but from transforming the way we relate to it. You cannot always choose what happens to you, but you can always choose how you respond to what happens. That is where peace is born. Consider this. Every day you are faced with choices. When someone speaks harshly to you, you can choose to respond with anger, or you can choose to remain calm. When life does not go the way you hoped, you can choose to fight against reality, or you can choose to accept and adapt. When sorrow arrives, you can choose to cling to it, replaying it endlessly, or you can choose to let it pass through you like clouds across the sky. Each of these moments is an invitation. Each is a doorway. And the choice you make is the difference between suffering and peace. This does not mean peace is easy. In fact, it is one of the most difficult choices to make because the mind is conditioned to resist, to cling, to demand. The mind always wants things to be different from how they are. It says, "I will be at peace only when I get what I want, only when my pain is gone, only when life looks the way I imagine it should." But Buddhism reveals that this is an illusion. If you wait for the world to give you peace, you will wait forever. The world changes constantly, and no circumstance lasts. The only stable source of peace is within, and it is unlocked the moment you stop demanding and start choosing. Think of the flame of a candle in a dark room. If you look only at the darkness, you will feel overwhelmed. But if you choose to look at the flame, the darkness loses its power. It does not disappear, the room is still dark, but the flame becomes your focus, your anchor. In the same way, peace does not mean your suffering disappears. It means you shift your focus. You choose to rest in calmness rather than in resistance. You choose to anchor yourself in stillness rather than in fear. The darkness may remain, but the flame lights your path. Another way to understand this is through gratitude. Gratitude is a choice, and it is one of the most direct paths to peace. Even in hardship, there is always something to be grateful for. Your breath, your body, the lessons life is teaching you, the chance to grow. When you shift your attention to gratitude, you discover that peace is not hidden. It is always available. Gratitude transforms even difficulty into a softer, more manageable experience. It does not erase pain, but it gives you the strength to carry it without being crushed. When the Buddha said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become," he was pointing directly to this truth. If you think sorrow, you become sorrow. If you think anger, you become anger. But if you think peace, if you cultivate calm, compassion, and acceptance, then you become peace itself. And once peace is your state of being, no external storm can shake you for long. You may bend, you may tremble, but you will not break. Reflect on your own life. How many times have you said, "I will be happy when," or "I will feel at peace if," and then placed peace somewhere in the future? Perhaps you said you would be at peace once you had more money, or once you found the right relationship, or once your health improved, or once your past no longer hurt. But even when some of those things came, did peace last? Or did your mind quickly move on to the next demand? This is the trap of chasing peace outside yourself. It never lasts because it depends on circumstances that are always changing. But when you choose peace within, you carry it wherever you go. It becomes unshakable, not because life stopped changing, but because you stopped attaching your calm to the changes. Choosing peace is not about ignoring injustice or pretending everything is fine. It is about refusing to let outer conditions dictate your inner state. You may still act, you may still strive to improve your life and the world, but you do so from a place of calm strength rather than restless despair. When you choose peace, you are not saying, "I don't care." You are saying, "I refuse to let this situation steal my inner freedom." This is the essence of Buddhist practice: liberation through awareness, freedom through choice. Think of a lotus flower. It grows in muddy water, surrounded by dirt and filth, yet it rises above the surface untouched, blooming with beauty and purity. The lotus does not wait for the water to be clean before it grows. It chooses to rise, even in the mud. In the same way, you do not need to wait for life to become perfect before choosing peace. You can bloom now, even in hardship, because peace is not in the mud or in the water. It is in your choice to rise above them. So, the next time sorrow knocks on your door, remember this: you have a choice. You can choose to invite it in and let it take over your home, or you can choose to acknowledge its presence, but keep your inner space clear. You can choose to feed it with endless thoughts, or you can choose to let it pass. You can choose to wait endlessly for the world to give you peace, or you can choose peace right now, in this very breath. Peace is not found because it was never lost. It has always been within you, waiting for you to turn toward it. The world may never give you perfect circumstances, but you do not need perfection to be free. You need awareness, acceptance, and the courage to choose peace over sorrow, over anger, over fear. Every moment offers you this choice, and every time you choose peace, you strengthen it until one day it becomes your natural state of being. And that is the greatest liberation. To realize that peace is not a treasure hidden outside, but a truth living within, awakened the moment you choose it. 8. The self dissolves when you stop holding on. At the heart of all sorrow lies one quiet illusion, the belief in a fixed, solid self that must be protected, defended, and preserved. Every time we say I, we imagine a permanent identity sitting inside us, something unchanging, something that can be broken, wounded, or destroyed. And from this belief arises endless pain. When someone insults you, you feel attacked because you believe the you they insulted is something real that must be defended. When you lose something you loved, you grieve not only for the thing, but for the wound it leaves in your story. When life changes in ways you did not expect, you feel sorrow because the image you had of yourself is shaken. But Buddhism reveals a truth that is both unsettling and profoundly liberating. The self you defend so fiercely is not solid at all. It is a collection of thoughts, memories, emotions, and habits, always shifting, always dissolving. Think of a flame. It burns brightly, and we call it the flame. But if you look closely, you realize it is never the same from one moment to the next. It is a process, not a thing. The flame you see now is not the flame you saw a second ago. In the same way, what you call yourself is not a fixed object. It is a process. Thoughts arising, feelings fading, memories appearing, desires shifting. There is no permanent I that sits unchanged behind it all. When you understand this deeply, sorrow begins to lose its grip, because what is there to wound when there is no solid self to attack? Much of our suffering comes from clinging to identity. We hold tightly to ideas like, I am successful, I am loved, I am worthy, or even their painful opposites, I am broken, I am worthless, I am unloved. Every time we hold one of these ideas, life will inevitably challenge it. Success will fade, love will change, worth will be questioned, and pain will come. If you cling to the idea of me, you will suffer each time reality does not match your story. But if you loosen your grip, if you allow the self to be fluid and impermanent like a flame, then sorrow cannot bind you. This is why the Buddha spoke so often about anatta, the teaching of no fixed self. It does not mean that you do not exist at all. It means that you exist as a flow, as a process, as a river that is never the same twice. The suffering begins when you freeze the river and say, "This is me." The liberation begins when you let the river flow and realize, "I am change itself." Think of how often your sense of self has shifted throughout your life. The you at 5 years old is not the same as the you now. Your thoughts, your body, your desires, your fears, all of them have transformed countless times, and yet you call both versions me. Which one is the real you? The answer is neither. They are simply expressions of the flow of life. When you cling to one identity, whether joyful or painful, you chain yourself to suffering. When you let go, you discover that peace comes not from protecting the self, but from dissolving it. Now consider sorrow itself. When grief enters, you say, "I am grieving." When anger comes, you say, "I am angry." But these are not who you are. They are simply passing states. When you stop saying, "I am this," or "this belongs to me," you create distance between yourself and the experience. You no longer identify with it. You allow it to arise, stay for a while and fade, just like clouds drifting across the sky. The less you hold on to the idea of a fixed me, the less suffering can attach itself to you. There is a story in Buddhist tradition about a monk who was insulted harshly by another. Instead of responding with anger, he simply smiled. When asked why, he said, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The insult, the attack, the words, they belonged to the one who gave them, not to him. Why? Because he did not hold on. He did not say, 'This is mine, this hurts me, this defines me.' He saw through the illusion of self, and in that seeing he found peace. This is what it means when we say that the self dissolves when you stop holding on. The more you cling to identity, the heavier you feel. The more you let go, the lighter you become. Imagine carrying a rope, pulling it tightly, straining your muscles. The rope feels heavy because of your grip, but if you simply let go, the weight disappears instantly. Life is like this. The suffering you carry is often not from the events themselves, but from the tight grip of I, me, and mine around those events. In meditation, this truth becomes clear. You sit, and thoughts arise. I am tired. I am anxious. I am failing. I am hopeful. But as you watch them with awareness, you begin to see that each thought is like a bubble, appearing, shimmering for a moment, then dissolving. None of them last, none of them are you, and if none of them are permanent, why cling? Why suffer over something that is already dissolving on its own? When you see this, peace begins to bloom. The ultimate peace, then, is not found by fixing the self or by decorating it with more achievements, possessions, or identities. The ultimate peace is found by letting the self soften, dissolve, and flow. When you stop holding on so tightly, you realize you are not a fixed object at all. You are spaciousness, you are awareness, you are the sky, not the storm. And in that sky, no sorrow can leave a permanent scar. So the next time sorrow comes, notice how quickly you make it personal. Notice how you say, "My grief, my suffering, my pain." Then, gently remind yourself, "This is not mine. This is not me. This is a passing wave in the ocean of life. Let it rise, let it fall, and let it go. The less you cling, the freer you become." And here lies the deepest truth. Peace is not something you achieve, but something that naturally appears when the illusion of self begins to loosen. When you stop defending, stop clinging, stop holding, the self dissolves, and in its place arises a vast stillness, a quiet spaciousness that has been here all along. That stillness is peace. That stillness is freedom. That stillness is who you truly are, once the chains of me and mine are finally released. 9. Freedom begins. When you stop demanding life to be different. One of the deepest roots of human sorrow is not the pain of what happens, but the endless demand that life should be something other than what it is. Every day, in small and large ways, we argue with reality. We wake up and wish the day were easier. We lose something and insist that it should have stayed. We meet with failure and demand that success should have been guaranteed. This constant battle with what is becomes an invisible weight on the heart, a chain that binds us to restlessness, disappointment, and grief. Buddhism teaches us a liberating truth. Freedom does not come when life becomes perfect. Freedom begins the moment you stop demanding life to be different and instead learn to meet life exactly as it is. Consider how often sorrow is tied to resistance. A person falls ill, and beyond the physical pain of the illness, they suffer from thoughts like, "Why me? This should not be happening. I don't deserve this." The event itself is one arrow, but the resistance to the event is the second arrow, the one we shoot into ourselves. A relationship ends and the loss hurts, but what multiplies the sorrow is the constant demand that it should not have ended, that it should have lasted forever. Failure arrives, and instead of accepting it as part of growth, the mind screams, "This should not have happened to me. Life is unfair, and so the fire of resistance burns hotter than the event itself. The Buddha once compared this resistance to being dragged by a river while clutching desperately to a rock. The water pulls, your arms ache, your body struggles, and yet you refuse to let go because you are convinced the rock should save you. But the river keeps moving, and the harder you resist, the more you suffer. True freedom, he taught, is like releasing the rock. You still float down the river, but without the struggle, without the fight. You flow with what is, instead of exhausting yourself by demanding that the river stop. Think of your own life. How many of your sorrows are born not from what happened, but from your refusal to accept it? How often do you replay the words, "It shouldn't be this way," and in doing so, you keep yourself trapped in pain long after the event has passed? Acceptance does not mean you enjoy the hardship. It does not mean you do not strive to improve your life. It simply means you stop fighting reality with demands that cannot be met. When you say yes to the present moment, even when it is uncomfortable, you release yourself from the prison of resistance. This does not mean passivity. Many people misunderstand acceptance as weakness, as if it means giving up and never seeking change. But acceptance is not surrender to helplessness. It is surrender to truth. You cannot change what has already happened. You cannot stop the nature of impermanence. You cannot demand that people never change, never leave, never disappoint. These are laws of existence, not mistakes in the design. The more you resist them, the more you suffer. But when you accept them, when you stop demanding life to obey your preferences, you find a space of freedom that nothing can shake. From that space, you can still act, still grow, still transform, but now your actions come from clarity, not desperation. Imagine rain falling. You can stand in the rain and curse the sky, shouting that it should not rain, that you had other plans, that the weather is unfair. Or you can accept that rain falls when it must. You can open an umbrella, adjust your plans, or even dance in it. The rain does not change, but your relationship with it transforms everything. Resistance multiplies suffering. Acceptance opens the door to peace. Buddhism emphasizes this through the practice of equanimity, the balanced state of mind that does not cling to pleasure or resist pain. Equanimity means meeting each moment with the same calm awareness, whether it brings joy or sorrow. It is the recognition that life will always bring both, and that demanding it to be otherwise is a recipe for endless disappointment. When equanimity grows in you, sorrow begins to lose its edge, because you are no longer fighting life's natural rhythms. You are walking with them. Look at nature for guidance. Trees do not demand the storm to avoid them. They bend with the wind, and in bending they survive. Rivers do not resist the rocks in their path. They flow around them, shaping them slowly over time. Even the sun does not argue with clouds when they cover it. It simply waits, knowing its light is unchanged, even if unseen for a moment. Nature accepts reality, and in that acceptance it remains at peace. We are the only ones who demand that reality bow to our will, and in doing so, we chain ourselves to sorrow. To stop demanding life to be different is to reclaim your inner freedom. It means you no longer wait for the world to arrange itself according to your wishes before allowing yourself to rest. It means you no longer say, "I will be at peace when," or "I will be happy if." Instead, you say, "I choose to be at peace now, even with things as they are." That choice is not always easy, but it is always available. And every time you make it, the grip of sorrow weakens. Think again of the times you suffered most. Was it not often because you were insisting on a different outcome, insisting that someone stay when they wanted to leave, insisting that success arrive when it did not, insisting that health remain when the body changed, insisting that the past be rewritten when it could not? Each demand is a chain, each resistance is a self-inflicted wound, and the moment you release those demands, the chains fall away. You breathe again. You discover that peace was waiting for you all along, not in a different life, not in a different world, but in this very moment, exactly as it is. This is why Buddhism teaches that liberation is not somewhere else. Liberation is here, in the way you relate to reality. The world will always move, change, rise and fall. People will come and go. Joy will arrive and fade. Pain will visit and pass. The question is not whether life will obey your wishes. It never will. The question is whether you will continue to demand it or whether you will learn to walk with it. The day you stop demanding life to be different is the day you step into freedom. So when sorrow comes, pause and ask yourself, is this pain from what happened, or is it from my refusal to accept it? Am I suffering from the storm itself, or from my demand that the sky should have remained clear? And in that moment of awareness, you are given a choice. You can keep resisting, keep clinging, keep demanding, and continue the cycle of sorrow. Or you can let go, accept what is, and discover the profound peace that was always within reach. Freedom begins here, not in a future without pain, not in a life without loss, but in the present moment when you stop demanding life to be different and choose to walk with it as it is. And in that choice, sorrow loses its power and peace becomes your natural state. 10. True strength is learning to sit with emptiness without fear. There is a quiet truth hidden at the center of sorrow, one that many people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. Beneath the anger, beneath the grief, beneath the endless distractions, there is an emptiness inside us. When a relationship ends, we feel the emptiness of absence. When someone we love dies, we feel the emptiness of loss. When life does not go the way we planned, we feel the emptiness of disappointment. Even in moments of success, when the joy fades, emptiness quietly returns, asking us questions we cannot answer. Who am I without this? What remains when everything I cling to disappears? For most people, this emptiness is terrifying. They fill it quickly with noise, with possessions, with relationships, with endless activity. They believe that if they can cover the emptiness with enough distractions, it will vanish. But Buddhism teaches something radically different. Emptiness is not the enemy. Emptiness is the gateway to freedom. True strength is not found in filling the emptiness, but in learning to sit with it, to see it clearly, and to realize that it is not darkness, but spaciousness. It is not a void to be feared, but the very space in which peace arises. Think of the sky again. The clouds may move, storms may come and go, but what makes the sky vast is its emptiness. Without emptiness, the clouds could not move, the birds could not fly, the sun could not shine. Emptiness is not a lack, it is the condition for possibility. In the same way, the emptiness within you is not the absence of meaning, but the space in which meaning is born. When you stop fearing it, you begin to see that emptiness is freedom. It is the reminder that you are not bound to any fixed identity, not chained to any possession, not trapped by any single story. When sorrow arrives, much of the pain comes not just from the event itself, but from the emptiness it reveals. A loved one leaves, and you feel the emptiness in your chest. A dream fails, and you feel the emptiness of direction. Loneliness creeps in, and you feel the emptiness of connection. Your first reaction is to run, to fill the space as quickly as possible, to cover the hollow feeling with something, anything. But the more you run, the more the emptiness grows, because it is not meant to be filled. It is meant to be understood. The Buddha spoke often of shunyata, the teaching of emptiness. This does not mean nothingness. It means that all things are empty of a fixed, permanent essence. They arise through causes and conditions. They exist for a time, and then they fade. Nothing is solid, nothing is unchanging, nothing is yours to hold forever. At first, this seems frightening. If nothing is permanent, what can you rely on? But when you look deeper, you realize this truth is the source of freedom. If nothing is fixed, then nothing can imprison you. If everything is in motion, then pain itself cannot last. If all things are empty, then you too are spacious, free, and unbound. Learning to sit with emptiness is like learning to sit by the ocean at night. At first, the vast darkness feels overwhelming. The waves are loud, the horizon disappears, and you feel small and alone. But as you sit longer, your fear begins to soften. You notice the rhythm of the waves, the sparkle of the stars above, the endless expanse that surrounds you. What once felt frightening now feels peaceful, even sacred. The same is true of emptiness within. The more you sit with it, the less it feels like a void, and the more it feels like a space of calm, a reminder that you are not trapped by anything you thought defined you. Think of the times in your life when emptiness forced you to grow. When you lost someone, you discovered compassion for others who also know loss. When you failed, you discovered strength you did not know you had. When you felt alone, you discovered the value of your own presence. The emptiness did not destroy you, it revealed you. It stripped away illusions and left you with what was essential. In that way, emptiness was not a curse, but a teacher. Yet many people continue to fear emptiness because they mistake it for loneliness or meaninglessness. They believe that if they sit quietly with themselves, they will only find sadness. But this is only because they have not yet learned to look deeply. Emptiness is not sadness. Emptiness is the quiet space where sadness, joy, love, and every other feeling come and go. It is the canvas of life, not the paint. To confuse the two is to miss the beauty of what emptiness truly is. In meditation, this becomes clear. As you sit in silence, thoughts begin to fade, emotions rise and dissolve, and slowly you begin to touch the spaciousness beneath them. At first, the mind resists. It wants to fill the silence with noise, to escape the vastness it does not understand. But with practice, the fear softens, and the emptiness begins to feel like home. You discover that in emptiness, there is nothing to defend, nothing to chase, nothing to cling to. There is only presence, only awareness, only peace. True strength, then, is not measured by how much you can hold on to, but by how much you can let go. It is not measured by how full your life appears, but by how calmly you can sit in the spaces where nothing seems to remain. When you no longer fear emptiness, sorrow loses its sharpness, because you understand that loss is only the return to spaciousness. What leaves was never truly yours. It was only passing through. And what remains is the vastness of your awareness, untouched and free. Imagine holding a cup of water tightly in your hand. If you grip too hard, the water spills out, leaving you with nothing but strain. But if you relax your grip, the water rests easily in your palm. Life is like this. The more you cling, the more sorrow spills into your heart. The more you soften, the more peacefully you can hold what comes without fear of emptiness when it goes. So the next time you feel emptiness inside, after loss, after disappointment, after sorrow, do not rush to cover it. Do not fear it. Sit with it. Breathe into it. See it not as a void, but as space. Space where healing can arise. Space where peace can bloom. Space where your true self can expand beyond all the small identities you once clung to. In time, you will see that emptiness was never the enemy. It was the doorway to freedom, the doorway to peace, the doorway to the vast stillness that has always been within you. True strength is not conquering the emptiness, but embracing it, sitting quietly within it, and realizing that it is not emptiness at all. It is spaciousness, openness, liberation. And in that realization, sorrow dissolves, because what once felt like a void becomes the very ground of peace itself. Lesson 11. Healing begins the moment you stop running from yourself. 11. Healing begins the moment you stop running from yourself. If you look closely at the way most people live, you will notice something subtle yet powerful. Almost everything they do is a form of running. Some run toward distractions, some run toward achievements, some run toward relationships, some even run toward spiritual practices. Not out of peace, but out of a desperate need to escape the quiet discomfort within themselves. They are not at ease sitting alone. They are not comfortable facing their own thoughts. They cannot bear the silence of their own company. And so they run, endlessly, restlessly, wearing different masks, but always driven by the same hidden fear. What will I find if I stop and face myself? Buddhism teaches that this running is the root of much of our suffering. For when you are always running, you never heal. You never allow your wounds to breathe. You never give yourself the space to understand what truly lives in your heart. Instead, you cover it with layers of distraction, layers of noise, layers of denial. But like a wound hidden under dirty bandages, the pain festers, growing deeper the more you refuse to face it. Healing does not begin when you escape yourself. Healing begins the moment you stop running and dare to sit quietly with what is inside. Think about how often we blame the outer world for our sorrow. We say, I am unhappy because of this person, because of this job, because of this situation. And while it is true that circumstances affect us, the deeper truth is that much of our pain comes from the way we resist ourselves. A person can live in comfort and still feel restless because they are not at peace within. Another can live with hardship and yet radiate calm because they have learned to sit with themselves without fear. The difference is not in what they have, but in how willing they are to face their own inner world. The Buddha himself discovered this truth under the Bodhi tree. After years of searching, after practicing with teachers, after punishing his body with extreme practices, he realized that the path to liberation was not outside but within. He sat still, unmoving, facing the entirety of his mind, the desires, the fears, the illusions, the attachments, and by not running from them, he understood them. In that deep stillness, he awakened. His example shows us that the courage to stop running from ourselves is the very foundation of healing and peace. What does it mean to stop running from yourself? It means allowing your pain to surface instead of burying it under endless distractions. It means sitting with your loneliness without immediately reaching for noise, screens, or company. It means looking at your fears instead of numbing them with pleasures or addictions. It means asking yourself honestly, what am I carrying that I have refused to face? And then giving it the gentle space it needs to be seen. This is not easy because the mind is skilled at escape. It convinces you that busyness will solve everything, that more achievements, more possessions, or more pleasures will cover the pain. But each of these is temporary, like painting over cracks in a wall without repairing the foundation. The cracks always return. The only way to truly heal is to stop covering and begin uncovering, to stop running outward and begin turning inward. Imagine a child who is crying, sitting alone in a room. If you keep shutting the door on the child, ignoring them, or distracting yourself with other things, their cries will only grow louder, more desperate. But if you enter the room, sit with the child, hold them and listen, their cries begin to soften. The same is true with the parts of yourself you have been avoiding, your pain, your sorrow, your regrets. They are like children within you, crying for attention. Running from them only makes them louder. Sitting with them, listening to them with compassion, is what allows them to heal. This is why meditation is such a powerful practice in Buddhism. It is not an escape. It is the opposite of running. When you sit in meditation, you close the door to distractions and turn fully toward yourself. At first, this can feel overwhelming. The mind races, old memories surface, uncomfortable feelings arise. But if you remain still, if you breathe and allow them to be there without judgment, you begin to see that none of them can harm you. They are like clouds passing through the sky of your awareness. By not running, you discover that the monsters you feared within yourself are not monsters at all. They are simply parts of you that needed acceptance. Healing begins in that moment of acceptance. You do not need to solve everything at once. You do not need to erase your past or force your emotions to disappear. You only need to stop running. You need to allow yourself to be present with whatever arises, fear, sadness, regret, anger, and meet it with compassion instead of resistance. The more you practice this, the more your inner world softens. The wounds that once seemed unbearable begin to close naturally, not because you forced them, but because you finally gave them the space to heal. Think of a pond of water that has been stirred into chaos. The more you stir it, the cloudier it becomes. But if you stop stirring, if you let the water settle, it slowly becomes clear. The same is true with your mind. Running stirs it endlessly. Stillness allows it to clear. And in that clarity, you begin to see the truth of who you are. Not the pain, not the wounds, not the stories, but the vast awareness beneath it all. That awareness was never broken. That awareness never needed fixing. It only needed you to stop running long enough to remember it. So many people spend their lives chasing peace outside, not realizing that they are fleeing from the very place where peace is waiting. They chase after the next distraction, the next relationship, the next achievement, believing it will quiet their restlessness. But the restlessness only ends when you stop chasing. The peace you are searching for is not in the next thing. It is in you, here and now, uncovered when you sit still and stop escaping yourself. This is the great paradox. You run from yourself because you fear that facing your pain will destroy you. But in truth, it is the running that destroys you. It is the endless escape that keeps you chained. When you finally turn and face yourself, when you finally sit in the silence you feared, you realize that nothing inside you can break you. Your awareness is vast enough to hold it all. Your heart is strong enough to feel it all. Your being is spacious enough to allow it all to pass through. And in that realization, healing begins. The Buddha often taught that liberation is not found by adding something new to yourself, but by removing the layers of illusion that cover who you truly are. Each time you stop running, you peel back one of those layers. Each time you sit with yourself in compassion, you step closer to the freedom that was always there. Healing is not a destination, it is a return to yourself. A return to the stillness you have always carried but forgotten in your flight. So when sorrow comes, do not run. When emptiness arises, do not escape. When regret whispers, do not silence it with noise. Sit, breathe, watch. Hold yourself gently, the way you would hold a child who is hurting. Trust that your awareness is strong enough to hold even the heaviest pain. Trust that your heart is spacious enough to heal when you stop resisting. Healing begins not in running, but in resting. It begins not in escape, but in presence. It begins not when you find the perfect distraction, but when you finally stop and meet yourself exactly as you are. The moment you stop running from yourself is the moment you begin to come home. And in that homecoming, you discover the peace that sorrow can never take away. The weight of sorrow lifts when you stop measuring life. One of the quietest traps of the human mind is its constant habit of measurement. Without even realizing it, we are always measuring ourselves against others, measuring today against yesterday, measuring our progress against some imagined future. We measure our worth by our possessions, our success by our achievements, our happiness by how it compares to someone else's life. And with every act of measurement, sorrow slips in. Because whenever you measure, you divide reality into what is and what should be, into what you have and what you lack, into who you are and who you believe you must become. This constant division creates a sense of incompleteness, a whisper that says, you are not enough, your life is not enough, this moment is not enough. Buddhism teaches that suffering is born not from what we lack, but from the illusion that life must be constantly measured, judged, and compared. The truth is, reality does not measure itself. The tree outside your window does not compare its height to the tree beside it. The river does not judge its flow against the flow of another. The bird does not measure its song against the songs of others. Nature simply is. Only the human mind divides life into numbers, into rankings, into better or worse, and in doing so, we create a prison of dissatisfaction. Think about the times you have felt sorrow. How often did it come from comparison? You look at someone who has more money, and suddenly your own feels insufficient. You see someone in love, and suddenly your own heart feels empty. You remember how happy you once were, and suddenly the present feels dull. None of these comparisons exist in reality. They exist only in the mind. And yet they carry the power to make us miserable, because the mind takes what is neutral and labels it as not enough. This constant measurement is what keeps us restless. Even in moments of joy, the mind measures. You are happy, but the mind says, will this last? Is this as good as it could be? Could I have more? And so the joy fades. Not because it ended naturally, but because the measuring mind dissolved it before it could ripen. The weight of sorrow lies not in life itself, but in this endless scale we carry, weighing every moment against another, never allowing ourselves to rest in what is. The Buddha spoke of this in the teaching of craving and aversion. Craving is the desire for more, the constant reaching. Aversion is the resistance to what is, the pushing away. Both are forms of measurement. Craving says, this is not enough, I need more. Aversion says, this is too much, I need less. And both keep the mind trapped in dissatisfaction. Liberation comes not from fulfilling every craving or escaping every discomfort, but from letting go of the scale altogether, from learning to meet each moment without measurement, without judgment, without demand. Imagine holding a glass of water. If you simply hold it as it is, it feels light, refreshing. But if you begin to compare it, this glass is smaller than another glass I saw, this water is less pure than what I tasted before, this drink is not as sweet as I wish it was. Suddenly the same glass becomes heavy with disappointment. The water has not changed, only the measurement has changed. And yet, that small shift in perspective can turn contentment into sorrow. This is why mindfulness is so transformative. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present with what is, without the interference of measurement. When you breathe mindfully, you do not compare this breath to the last or the next. You simply breathe. When you eat mindfully, you do not measure your meal against another or complain about what it lacks. You simply taste. When you live mindfully, you step out of the prison of measurement and into the freedom of presence. And in presence, the weight of sorrow lifts, because there is nothing missing, nothing lacking, nothing to compare. There is only this moment, and in this moment, you are enough. Think of children playing. They do not measure the quality of their laughter or compare the value of their game to another. They play fully, immersed in the joy of the moment. Only as we grow older do we lose this natural freedom, because society trains us to measure grades, salaries, achievements, appearances. We are told that our worth is always in comparison to another, that our joy must be weighed against some standard. But the child within us remembers a different truth. Joy does not come from measurement, it comes from presence. Consider also how we measure ourselves against time. We say, by this age, I should have achieved this. By now, I should be further along. I should be more successful, more stable, more accomplished. These invisible deadlines weigh heavily on us, creating sorrow where none needs to exist. Life does not follow your schedule. The tree does not bloom because the calendar says so. It blooms when the season is right. You too are unfolding in your own time. By demanding that your life match a certain measurement, you chain yourself to unnecessary suffering. But when you let go of the clock, when you stop comparing your journey to someone else's, you discover a peace that is timeless. The Buddha often reminded his followers to practice contentment. Contentment is not laziness, nor is it settling for less. It is the deep recognition that this moment is enough as it is. When you live with contentment, you stop carrying the heavy scales of comparison. You stop asking, is this better than before? Is this as good as what others have? You simply rest in what is. And in that resting, sorrow cannot find a foothold. This does not mean you stop growing or striving. You can still pursue goals, improve your life, and work toward your dreams. But you do so without chaining your happiness to the outcome. You do so with freedom, not desperation. You say, I will walk this path, but I do not measure my worth by where it leads. This is true strength, to live fully without measuring, to act without clinging, to strive without chaining your joy to results. Imagine setting down a heavy bag you did not realize you were carrying. That is what it feels like to stop measuring. The relief is immediate, the lightness undeniable. Life becomes simpler, clearer, and more spacious. You begin to see beauty where before you saw lack. You begin to taste joy where before you tasted comparison. And slowly the weight of sorrow lifts, not because life has changed, but because you no longer measure it against your endless demands. So the next time you feel sorrow, pause and ask, am I suffering from what is happening or from how I am measuring it? Am I comparing this moment to another? Am I demanding that it be more or less than it is? And if the answer is yes, gently set down the scale. Breathe. See the moment without comparison. Taste it as it is. Let it be enough. Freedom lies in this simple shift. When you stop measuring life, you stop dividing yourself against it. You stop demanding more and start receiving what is already here. And in that receiving, the weight of sorrow lifts, leaving behind a peace so natural, so profound, that you wonder how you ever missed it. Because the truth is, life was never incomplete. It was only the measuring mind that told you so. Letting go of control is the doorway to inner freedom. One of the deepest illusions the human mind clings to is the belief that we can control life. We plan every detail, we build expectations, we imagine futures as if we are the architects of destiny itself. And yet, life rarely unfolds in the exact way we want. People change, seasons shift, opportunities appear and vanish. Health rises and falls. The more tightly we try to hold the reins, the more frustrated we become, because reality refuses to obey our every command. This clash between our desire to control and the truth of impermanence is the root of immense sorrow. Buddhism teaches that peace begins the moment you loosen your grip. True freedom does not come from controlling life, but from flowing with it. The river does not demand that the mountain move out of its way. It bends, it curves, it adapts, and in doing so, it finds its path to the ocean. The wind does not resist the trees. It weaves between them, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, but always moving forward. When you stop demanding control, when you release the tight fist of expectation, you begin to discover an inner spaciousness that no storm can shatter. Think about the times in your life when sorrow was sharpest. Was it not often because something happened outside your control? A loved one left, though you begged them to stay. A dream collapsed, though you gave it everything. A sudden illness arrived, though you tried to protect yourself. In those moments, the pain itself was real, But much of the suffering came from the thought, "This should not have happened. I should have been able to stop this." That voice of control is what chains you to grief. Without it, the pain still exists, but it passes more gently, more naturally, like rain that falls and then clears. This does not mean you must live passively. Buddhism does not say, do nothing, care for nothing, plan for nothing. What it teaches is balance, the wisdom to act with intention, but without attachment to outcomes. You can plant seeds, but you cannot command the rain. You can practice diligently, but you cannot force enlightenment to arrive on your schedule. You can love deeply, but you cannot demand that love remain forever unchanged. Life invites your participation, but it does not promise your control. The Buddha once compared human clinging to control with a man caught in quicksand. The more he struggles, the deeper he sinks. His frantic effort to escape only pulls him further down. The only way to survive is to relax, to spread his body, to float instead of fight. In the same way, when you cling desperately to control, you sink deeper into sorrow. But when you relax into the flow of reality, when you stop resisting what you cannot command, you discover a freedom that was hidden all along. Imagine carrying a rope tied to a wild horse. You pull with all your strength, trying to drag it in the direction you want. The horse resists, grows wilder, and drags you painfully across the ground. But the moment you let go of the rope, the struggle ends. You are no longer bruised and battered by the fight. Life is that wild horse. The more you try to force it into your plan, the more it resists. Letting go does not mean you lose. It means you stop exhausting yourself in a battle you could never win. Think also of how much energy we waste on small controls. We grow angry at the weather because it rains when we wanted sun. We grow frustrated at people because they do not act according to our expectations. We grow anxious about the future because we cannot guarantee what will happen. None of these things are truly under our control, and yet we suffer because we insist they should be. What if instead we lived like the ocean, steady in its depth, calm in its vastness, regardless of the winds above? The waves may rise and fall, but the ocean remains. That is the peace that arises when you let go of control. Buddhist practice often uses breath to teach this truth. When you breathe in meditation, you cannot control the breath entirely. You can slow it, you can deepen it, but you cannot demand that it never ends. Each breath arises, stays for a moment, and dissolves. If you cling to the inhale, refusing to exhale, you suffocate. If you cling to the exhale, refusing to inhale, you starve. Only when you allow the natural rhythm of breath, in, out, rise, fall, do you feel calm and alive. Life itself is like this. To cling is to suffocate. To let go is to live. Letting go of control does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means understanding the difference between what belongs to you and what does not. Your actions belong to you. Your effort, your intention, your choices, these are within your reach. But outcomes, the responses of others, the movements of time, these do not belong to you. When you confuse the two, you suffer. When you act wisely on what is yours and release what is not, you walk in freedom. Think of a gardener. She plants seeds, waters the soil, tends the garden with care. She does everything within her power, but she cannot control the sun, the rain, or the growth of each seed. Some bloom, some wither, some surprise her in ways she never expected. If she demanded that every seed bloom exactly on schedule, she would live in constant frustration. But if she accepts the mystery of growth, she can enjoy the beauty of each flower, even if the garden does not match her plans. In the same way, your life is a garden. Do what you can with care, but do not demand control of the rain. When you let go of control, something beautiful happens. Space opens up inside you. Anxiety softens because you no longer feel responsible for the impossible. resentment fades because you stop demanding that people and events obey your script. Sorrow lightens because you allow impermanence to flow instead of clinging to what must eventually change. You discover that freedom is not in commanding life, but in releasing it. This is why Buddhism emphasizes surrender. Not a weak surrender to fate, but a wise surrender to reality. Reality is vast, mysterious, and ever-changing. To fight it is to exhaust yourself. To flow with it is to find peace. The river carries you whether you resist or not. The choice is whether you will suffer in resistance or rest in trust. So the next time you feel sorrow, pause and ask, am I suffering because of what happened, or because I am clinging to the idea that it should have been different? Am I hurting because of life itself, or because I believed I could control it? That awareness is the first step in letting go. Breathe deeply, release the rope, trust the current. Let life move, as it always has, as it always will. In the end, you will see that control was never the path to peace. It was the barrier. The doorway to freedom has been here all along, waiting for you to loosen your grip, to open your hand, to let life be what it is. And when you walk through that doorway, you discover a peace so vast, so steady, that no storm can shake it. Because you no longer need to command the winds, you have become the sky that holds them all. The weight of sorrow lifts when you stop measuring life. One of the greatest sources of human sorrow is not pain itself, but the invisible scale we carry inside our minds. The constant act of measuring. Without realizing it, we are always comparing, always weighing one thing against another. We measure our bodies against the bodies of others, our wealth against the wealth of our neighbors, our relationships against the stories we see on screens, our happiness against a memory of a time when life felt easier. We measure this moment against what we think it should be, and in doing so, we almost always find the present lacking. Every act of measurement is like a quiet judgment whispered into our ear. This is not enough. You are not enough. Your life is not enough. And in that whisper, sorrow is born. Buddhism teaches us that suffering comes not from the world itself, but from the way the mind clings, resists, and compares. Look closely at reality as it is. The tree outside does not measure itself against the tree beside it. The river does not complain that another river flows faster. The bird does not envy the song of another bird. The sun does not measure its brightness against the stars. In nature, things simply are. But in the human mind, measurement never stops. We divide life into better and worse, higher and lower, more and less, always creating distance between ourselves and the wholeness of the present. Think about how this shows up in your own life. Perhaps you feel sadness because you earn less than someone else, though what you have already sustains you. Perhaps you feel restless because your life today does not match the image you once had for yourself. Perhaps you feel bitter because you compare your journey to another's, not realizing that they too are silently struggling with their own burdens. None of this sorrow comes from reality itself. It comes from the measuring mind, a mind that refuses to let life be what it is, always turning the present into something to be judged. This habit of measuring is so ingrained that we hardly notice it. Even in moments of joy, the mind compares. You are happy, but the mind whispers, will this last? Is this as good as it could be? Do others have more than me? And in that whisper, joy fades before it has fully bloomed. We do not even allow ourselves to drink deeply from happiness because measurement interrupts it. It is as though we are constantly pouring water into a cup but poking holes into the bottom, never allowing it to fill. The Buddha pointed to this truth when he spoke of craving and aversion. Craving is the desire for more, the measurement that says, this is not enough. Aversion is the rejection of what is, the measurement that says, this is too much. Both keep us trapped in restlessness. They are two sides of the same coin, dissatisfaction. The root of peace lies in letting go of the scale altogether, stepping out of the endless game of better and worse, and resting in the simple completeness of the present moment. Imagine holding a fruit in your hand, a simple apple. If you eat it with presence, you taste its sweetness, you feel its texture, you enjoy its nourishment. But if you compare it, this apple is smaller than the one yesterday, not as sweet as the one from the store, not as perfect as the ones I see in advertisements. Suddenly, the apple feels disappointing. The fruit itself has not changed, only the measurement has changed. And yet, that single act of comparison steals your peace. This is why mindfulness is such a powerful antidote to sorrow. Mindfulness means being fully here with what is, without the interference of judgment or comparison. When you breathe mindfully, you do not measure this breath against the last. You simply breathe. When you walk mindfully, you do not compare this step with the next. You simply walk. When you live mindfully, you begin to see that the prison of measurement dissolves, and life becomes lighter, freer, more vivid. In presence, there is no lack, no scale, no constant not enough. There is only the richness of this moment, just as it is. Think also of how we measure ourselves against time. We carry invisible calendars in our minds. By this age, I should have achieved this. By now, I should have reached that goal. My life should look a certain way. When reality does not match these mental deadlines, we feel sorrow, as if we have failed. But who created these deadlines? Who wrote these rules? They are illusions, taught by society, absorbed by comparison, but they are not truths of existence. The tree does not hurry its blooming because another tree has blossomed earlier. It blooms when the season is right. You, too, are unfolding in your own time. Measuring your life against someone else's or against your own imagined timeline is like pulling on the petals of a flower, trying to make it bloom faster. Instead of helping, it only destroys the beauty of what is already there. The Buddha often spoke of contentment as one of the highest forms of wealth. Contentment does not mean you never grow, never dream, never work toward better conditions. It means that while you walk your path, you are not enslaved by comparison. You are not trapped in the thought that this moment is insufficient. Contentment is the ability to rest in enoughness, to say, this breath is enough, this meal is enough, this life is enough. When you live in contentment, sorrow loses its grip because there is nothing left for it to feed on. Consider also how much sorrow comes from measuring ourselves against our past. You look back at a time when you were happier, healthier, or more successful, and you compare today against it. The comparison creates a sense of loss, even if today holds its own blessings. Or you measure yourself against an imagined future. One day, I will be at peace when I reach this point, when I achieve this dream, when I find this love. But both past and future are measurements that pull you out of the only place where peace exists, the present moment. The more you measure, the heavier sorrow feels. The less you measure, the lighter life becomes. To let go of measuring is to let go of the heavy scales you did not even know you were carrying. It is like setting down a weight from your shoulders and realizing how light you truly are. When you stop comparing your life to others, you begin to see the unique beauty of your own journey. When you stop measuring today against yesterday or tomorrow, you begin to taste the fullness of this day. When you stop demanding that each moment be more than it is, you discover that peace was here all along, waiting quietly beneath your judgments. This does not mean you stop striving for growth or abandon your dreams. Growth is natural, just like a seed growing into a tree. But growth happens best in freedom, not in chains. You can still pursue goals, but when you release the habit of measuring, you no longer say, I will only be happy when I arrive. Instead, you say, I am walking this path, and I choose peace at every step. That shift transforms sorrow into strength and striving into a joyful expression of life rather than a desperate escape from it. The practice is simple but powerful. The next time you feel sorrow, pause and ask yourself, what scale am I using right now? Am I comparing myself to someone else, to the past, to the future, to an imagined standard? Then breathe deeply and let the scale go. See the moment as it is, unmeasured, unjudged, complete. In that single breath of freedom, the weight begins to lift. When you stop measuring life, you discover a truth that is both humbling and liberating. Life was never incomplete. It was only the measuring mind that told you so. And when that mind softens, sorrow dissolves, revealing the peace that has been here from the very beginning. Letting go of control is the doorway to inner freedom. One of the greatest illusions the human mind holds on to is the belief that life can be fully controlled. From a young age, we are taught to plan, to arrange, to design the future as if it were clay in our hands. We imagine that if we work hard enough, if we make the right choices, if we put every detail in order, life will unfold exactly the way we want it to. But again and again, life teaches us otherwise. No matter how carefully you plan, storms arrive. No matter how tightly you cling, people change. No matter how fiercely you resist, time moves forward, leaving behind what you thought would remain. The deeper you try to grip life, the more it slips through your fingers. And with every slip, sorrow follows. Buddhism teaches us a radical truth. The root of much of our suffering is not life itself, but our endless attempt to control it. The tighter you try to hold the river, the more it escapes you. The harder you try to force outcomes, the more frustrated you become. True peace does not come from controlling life. True peace comes from flowing with it. Think about the times you suffered most deeply. Perhaps you lost a loved one despite doing everything you could to hold on. Perhaps you worked tirelessly for a dream that still collapsed. Perhaps illness struck when you least expected it. The sorrow you felt was real, but look closely and you will see that much of the weight came from the thought, "This should not have happened. I should have been able to stop this. Life should have obeyed my will." That thought, that illusion of control, is what deepened the wound. Without it, pain still hurts, but it passes more gently, like rain that falls and then clears. With it, the rain becomes a storm inside you that never ends. The Buddha compared this to a man trapped in quicksand. The more he thrashes, the more he sinks. His frantic struggle meant to save him only drags him deeper. The only way to survive is to stop resisting, to spread out, to float instead of fight. In the same way, our constant struggle for control drags us deeper into suffering. The moment we release the struggle, the moment we stop fighting reality, we discover that life can carry us forward with less pain than we imagined. Letting go of control does not mean giving up. It does not mean living passively, without direction, without care. It means living wisely. It means understanding what belongs to you and what does not. Your actions belong to you, your effort, your kindness, your choices. These are within your reach, but outcomes do not belong to you. The reactions of others, the unfolding of time, the impermanence of all things, these are beyond your grasp. To confuse the two is to guarantee sorrow. To accept the difference is to step into freedom. Think of a gardener. She plants seeds, waters the soil, tends to the garden with patience. She does everything within her power, but she cannot control the rain. She cannot command the sun. She cannot guarantee which seeds will bloom and which will not. If she demands absolute control, she will live in constant frustration. But if she accepts the mystery of growth, she can enjoy the beauty of each flower, even if her garden does not look exactly as she planned. In the same way, your life is a garden. Do what you can with care, but do not demand control of the rain. Consider also the countless small things we try to control each day. We complain about the weather as if the clouds should listen to our mood. We grow angry when people act differently than we expect. as if they should live only to fulfill our script. We grow anxious about the future, as if worrying could guarantee its safety. Each of these moments is another tug at the rope of control, another battle against a force too vast to obey us, and each battle leaves us exhausted. But look at nature. The river does not resist the rocks in its path, it flows around them. The tree does not fight the wind, it bends and sways, and in bending it survives the storm. Even the sun does not resist the night, it simply waits, knowing that darkness cannot last forever. Nature is free because it does not cling to control. We are the only ones who believe life must obey us, and in that belief we suffer. This is why Buddhist practice emphasizes surrender, not a weak surrender to despair, but a wise surrender to reality. When you meditate, you learn this truth through breath. Each inhale arises, stays for a moment, and then dissolves. If you cling to the inhale, refusing to exhale, you suffocate. If you cling to the exhale, refusing to inhale, you starve. Only by allowing the natural rhythm of breath rise and fall, in and out, do you feel alive. Life itself is like this breath. To cling is to suffer. To let go is to live. Letting go of control is also the key to love. So often we chain our relationships with expectations. You must never change. You must never leave. You must always give me what I want. But people, like everything, are impermanent. They grow, they shift, they come and go. If you demand control, you will suffocate them and yourself. But if you allow them to be as they are, free, flowing, alive, then even if love changes, your heart remains open. You discover that love is not control, but presence, not ownership, but freedom. The same applies to your own journey. Many people live enslaved by invisible timelines. By this age, I should have achieved this. By now, I should be further ahead. My life should look like this. These timelines are chains made of control. They strangle joy from the present moment, replacing it with dissatisfaction. But when you let go of control, you release these false deadlines. You allow your life to unfold at its own pace, just as a flower blooms when the season is right, not when you demand it. The beauty of letting go is that it creates space inside you. Anxiety softens because you no longer feel responsible for what you could never command. Resentment fades because you stop demanding that life obey your plan. Sorrow lightens because you understand that impermanence is not your enemy, but your teacher. You begin to walk with life instead of against it. You discover freedom not in domination, but in trust. So when sorrow visits you, pause and ask, am I suffering because of what happened, or because I believed I could control it? Am I hurting because of reality, or because I demanded it look different? In that question lies your liberation. Every time you loosen your grip, every time you open your hand, every time you allow life to flow as it will, you step deeper into freedom. In the end, peace does not come from controlling the river. It comes from learning to float. The doorway to freedom has always been here, waiting for you to walk through it. And the key is simple: let go. Patience with life is the highest form of strength. When we think of strength, most people imagine force, the ability to push through obstacles, to bend life according to their will, to endure hardship with sheer power. But Buddhism teaches us that the greatest strength is not found in force, but in patience. Patience is not weakness, and it is not passive. It is the quiet power that allows you to endure storms without breaking, to hold pain without despair, and to wait for the unfolding of life without demanding it happen on your schedule. In truth, patience is the bridge between suffering and peace. Without it, sorrow multiplies. With it, even pain can transform into wisdom. Look closely at sorrow, and you will see that much of it comes from impatience. We are impatient with ourselves, expecting healing to be quick, growth to be instant, and progress to be constant. We are impatient with others, expecting them to always understand us, to never disappoint, to match our pace of change. We are impatient with life, expecting every goal to unfold easily, every dream to arrive swiftly, every plan to go smoothly. And when these expectations are not met, as they rarely are, sorrow tightens its grip. We feel frustrated, restless, and defeated, not because life has truly failed us, but because we demanded that life obey a timeline it never promised. The Buddha often taught that suffering arises from craving and clinging, and impatience is a form of craving. It is the craving for reality to move faster than it naturally does. It is the refusal to walk at the pace of life. But life is not hurried. Seeds take time to bloom. Rivers carve valleys over centuries. Even the sun rises slowly, illuminating the world inch by inch. Why then do we imagine that our healing, our growth, our peace must come instantly? To expect otherwise is to argue with the rhythm of existence itself. Think about healing from grief. When someone you love leaves, through death or distance, the pain is sharp and the heart longs for relief. Impatience says, I should be over this by now. I should not still be hurting. But healing does not obey such commands. It moves slowly, like the tide, retreating one day and surging back the next. If you demand that grief end before its time, you only deepen your sorrow. But if you practice patience, if you allow the heart to heal at its own pace, you discover that time, compassion, and presence do what force cannot. The wound slowly closes, and peace returns, not on your schedule, but on life's. Think also about growth. Many people begin a path of self-improvement or spiritual practice, expecting immediate transformation. They sit in meditation for a few weeks and grow frustrated when the mind still races. They try to break a habit and feel defeated when it returns. They measure themselves against perfection and despair when they fall short. But growth is not a sudden leap. It is a slow unfolding. Just as a tree does not shoot into the sky overnight, but grows ring by ring, season by season, so too do we. Patience allows you to stay on the path without despair. Impatience drives you away before the fruits have ripened. Even in love, patience is the truest form of strength. Relationships are filled with misunderstandings, mistakes, and differences. Without patience, love quickly collapses under the weight of expectations. We demand constant harmony, instant change, perfect understanding. But patience allows us to hold space for others to grow, to forgive, to stumble, and to rise again. Patience teaches us that love is not a race to perfection, but a journey of presence, of staying when it is easier to run, of breathing when it is easier to shout. In Buddhism, patience, khanti, is considered a perfection, one of the highest qualities to cultivate. Why? Because without it, no other virtue can take root. Wisdom requires patience to observe deeply. Compassion requires patience to listen fully. Peace requires patience to allow storms to pass. Without patience, we rush, we cling, we resist, and in doing so, we create suffering. With patience, we align ourselves with the natural flow of life, and suffering begins to loosen. Imagine a farmer in his field. He plants seeds and tends to them with care. But no matter how much he waters them, no matter how much he watches, he cannot force the harvest to arrive today. If he grows impatient and digs up the seeds to check their growth, he destroys them. Only by waiting, by trusting the unseen process, does he one day reap the fruits. Life is the same. Many of our sorrows come from digging up our own seeds with impatience. But when we trust, when we allow time to do its quiet work, life blossoms in ways we could not have forced. Patience also transforms how we meet hardship. When challenges arise, the impatient mind says, "This must end now. I cannot bear this any longer." And in that resistance, suffering intensifies. But patience says, "This too will pass. I will endure until it changes." The hardship may still be painful, but it no longer feels unbearable because you no longer demand that it vanish instantly. Patience gives you the strength to breathe even in difficulty, to hold steady until the storm softens. Think of a mountain standing through centuries of wind, rain, and snow. It does not rush the seasons. It does not demand the storm to end. It endures with patience, knowing that storms come and go, but its roots remain deep. That is true strength. Not the ability to stop the storm, but the ability to remain unmoved until it passes. The practice of patience begins with awareness. Notice the moments when impatience arises in you. Notice the restless thought that says, "Why is this taking so long? Why am I still hurting? Why hasn't life given me what I want?" Then pause, breathe, and remember, nothing in nature is rushed, yet everything is accomplished. The tree does not hurry, the river does not rush, and yet both fulfill their purpose in time. You too are unfolding at the pace you need. Patience is not waiting passively. It is waiting actively, with presence, with faith, with acceptance. It is choosing to breathe instead of complain, to stay instead of flee, to trust instead of force. It is meeting each moment fully, without demanding that the next one arrive faster. And in that practice, you begin to see how much sorrow was tied not to the events of your life, but to your refusal to wait for them to unfold. The weight of sorrow lightens the moment you stop rushing life. Healing takes time. Growth takes time. Love takes time. Even peace itself takes time, ripening slowly in the stillness of your practice. The impatient mind says, "Not yet, not enough." The patient heart says, "This moment is enough, and the next will come when it is ready." So the next time sorrow feels heavy, pause and ask yourself, am I suffering because of what is happening, or because I am demanding it end before its time? Am I hurting because life is cruel, or because I am impatient with its rhythm? That awareness is the first step toward patience, and in patience, you discover strength deeper than any force, because patience allows you to endure without breaking, to love without conditions, and to heal without rushing. In the end, patience is not just endurance, it is wisdom. It is the recognition that life has its own timing, and that peace comes not from controlling that timing, but from aligning yourself with it. The strongest person is not the one who forces life into submission, but the one who waits with calm, who breathes through storms, who trusts the slow unfolding of existence. And when you cultivate this patience, you discover something extraordinary. Sorrow itself becomes lighter because you no longer demand that it vanish immediately. You allow it to rise, to stay, to pass in its own time, and in that allowing, you find freedom. True strength, then, is not conquering life, but walking with it, step by patient step, until peace reveals itself naturally. Freedom comes when you stop living in stories. The human mind is a storyteller. From the moment we wake until the moment we sleep, the mind weaves endless narratives about who we are, what has happened to us, and what will come next. We tell ourselves stories about our past. I was betrayed, I was unloved, I was a failure, I was successful, I was important. We tell ourselves stories about our future. One day I will be happy, one day I will prove myself, one day I will escape this pain. And in between we carry stories about the present. I am not enough. My life is not enough. Nothing ever goes my way. These stories feel so real that we mistake them for truth. We live inside them as though they are the walls of our existence. But Buddhism teaches us a liberating truth. Our stories are not reality. They are thoughts, patterns, interpretations. They are filters that color our view of life, often blinding us to what is actually here. And more than that, they are the chains that bind us to sorrow. Think about the last time you felt deep sadness. Was it not shaped by a story? Perhaps someone hurt you, and the event lasted only minutes, but the story you built around it. They always treat me this way. Nobody respects me. I will never be valued. Extended the pain for weeks, months, even years. The wound was real, but the story kept reopening it. Or perhaps you failed at something, and instead of letting the moment pass, you told yourself the story. I am a failure. I always mess up. I will never succeed. The failure itself was one moment in time. The story turned it into a prison. The Buddha described this as being shot by two arrows. The first arrow is the pain itself, the event, the loss, the insult, the failure. The second arrow is the story we build. This pain means I am unworthy. This pain means I am doomed. This pain means I will never be happy. The first arrow is unavoidable. Pain is part of life. But the second arrow is optional, and yet it is often the one that hurts the most. Our stories about the past keep us chained to regret and resentment. We replay events again and again, not realizing that the story grows heavier with each retelling. A memory may have ended long ago, but by narrating it repeatedly, we keep it alive in our hearts. Our stories about the future trap us in anxiety as we imagine countless scenarios that may never happen. We suffer not from reality, but from the movie in our minds. And our stories about ourselves, the identities we cling to, become the deepest prison of all. We say, I am broken, I am unlucky, I am not good enough, and then we live as though these words were carved into stone. But here is the truth. You are not your stories. They are like clouds drifting across the sky of your awareness, temporary, shifting, insubstantial. Beneath them, you remain vast and free. When you stop living inside the stories, when you see them for what they are, thoughts, not truths, the weight of sorrow begins to lift. Imagine sitting in front of a fire. If you stare only at the smoke, the world looks grey and heavy. But if you look beyond the smoke, you see the clear sky. Our stories are like smoke. They cloud our vision, making everything seem darker than it is. But the moment you realize this is just smoke, not the sky itself, clarity returns. The pain may still exist, but it no longer controls you because you are no longer lost in the story. This is the essence of mindfulness practice. When you sit in meditation, thoughts arise. I am anxious. I am failing. I am not enough. Instead of diving into the story, you learn to observe it. You say, there is anxiety. There is a thought about failure. There is a story of not being enough. By creating that space, you loosen the grip of the story. You begin to see it as a passing thought rather than an absolute truth. And slowly, you discover that beneath the noise of stories, there is a stillness that has never been harmed. Think also about how stories shape relationships. Two people can experience the same event, but their stories about it will differ. One may feel loved, the other ignored, depending on the story they tell themselves. This shows that sorrow often comes less from what happened and more from the meaning we attach to it. The moment you realize this, you gain freedom. You cannot always control events, but you can learn to see the story for what it is, a construction of the mind, not reality itself. The power of stories lies in repetition. The more you tell a story, the more you believe it. If you repeat, I am unlucky, you begin to see every setback as proof. If you repeat, I am unworthy, you begin to interpret even kindness as pity. But the same power of repetition can be turned to freedom. If you begin to tell yourself stories of compassion, I am learning, I am healing, I am growing, the mind reshapes itself. The key is to remember that all stories are choices. You do not have to live in the old ones. But the highest freedom comes not from replacing negative stories with positive ones, but from stepping out of stories altogether. Imagine silence after endless noise. Imagine putting down a heavy book you've been carrying for years. When you stop narrating your life, when you let each moment simply be without labeling it, peace arises naturally. The world becomes vivid, direct, unfiltered. You taste food without comparing it. You walk without narrating your pace. You breathe without judgment. This is life beyond stories, simple, free, alive. So the next time sorrow weighs on you, pause and ask, what story am I telling myself right now? Is this story helping me, or is it chaining me? Then take a breath and let the story go. Even for one moment, sit in the raw presence of life without narrating it. Notice the peace that arises, subtle but profound. That peace was not created, it was always there, hidden beneath the layers of story. Freedom comes when you stop living in stories. You are not your past, you are not your failures, you are not your labels, you are not the voice that narrates endlessly in your mind. You are the awareness beneath it all, spacious and free. And once you realize this, sorrow loses its power, because it can no longer hold you hostage inside a story that was never the whole truth. The sky remains vast even when clouds fill it. You remain whole even when stories cover you. And the moment you stop clinging to them, the moment you let them dissolve like mist in the morning sun, you discover a freedom so deep, so steady, that no sorrow can touch it. As you have walked through these lessons, you may have noticed something profound. Sorrow was never truly in the events of life. It was never fully in the betrayal, the failure, the loss, the loneliness, or the uncertainty. Those were only the sparks. The fire of sorrow grew when the mind clung, when the heart resisted, when you replayed stories, when you demanded that life be something other than what it is. Each lesson has shown a different way of loosening that grip. To flow like the river, to accept the fire as a teacher, to stop owning pain, to rest in emptiness without fear, to choose peace instead of waiting for it, to stop measuring, to stop demanding control, to stop running from yourself, to sit with patience, and to dissolve stories. All of these are not separate truths, but different petals of the same flower. And at the center of that flower is the timeless wisdom of Buddhism. Liberation is not found by changing life, but by changing your relationship with it. The Buddha taught that suffering exists, but he also taught that freedom from suffering exists. This freedom is not a faraway treasure, hidden in temples or mountains. It is here, in the very breath you are taking now. It is here when you stop clinging to the past, when you stop chasing the future, when you allow the present to be enough. It is here when you soften into patience, when you release the rope of control, when you let go of the heavy scales of comparison. It is here when you remember that peace was never outside you. It was always the nature of your own awareness, waiting for you to return. Do not think that you must master all these lessons at once. Even a single drop of practice transforms the ocean of your life. Each moment you pause instead of rushing, each moment you breathe instead of resisting, each moment you notice your story and let it go, that is freedom here and now. It may be subtle at first, but with patience it grows into a steady flame that no storm can extinguish. And so the invitation is simple. Stop running, stop measuring, stop demanding. Sit gently with yourself. Allow life to unfold in its rhythm, just as rivers flow, just as trees grow, just as the sun rises. In that allowing, sorrow loses its weight, and peace reveals itself as what it always was, your truest home. The path beyond sorrow is not about escaping life. It is about living it fully, without chains, without clinging, without fear. To walk this path is to return home to yourself, to the vast stillness within that no loss, no failure, no change can ever touch. That stillness is peace. That stillness is freedom. That stillness is you.